and I guess getting a little older to get to music, because we just didn't have much, we had a DJ in at the local radio station. He played, he was the night guy on the oldies station, so we would call him and request a song. Like I remember one time requesting Jimi Hendrix Fire or something like that. I was like, man, or Voodoo Child or something. He'd say, okay, you boys get ready, I'm gonna play it at
the intersection of good drinks, good music, and good times. This is Hops and Spirits Bar Conversations.
We got a fun episode for you this week as we welcome in Chris Davisson of the Davisson Brothers Band. They got an album dropping on Friday. Home is Where the Heart Is. You'll have to check that out, just like you'll have to stick around for our conversation. But before we get into all that, don't forget to check out hopspirits.com, where you can check out what's pouring, some happy hour Q&As, and so much more. You don't want to miss anything. hopspirits.com. But up next, it's Tasting Notes as we talk about all those wild finishes in bourbons with Chad Watson. Enjoy.
Did you know Hops and Spirits is more than just this podcast? Check out hopspirits.com for our latest episode release, past episodes, interviews with interesting folks in the alcohol industry, and so much more. Just go to hopspirits.com. Feel free to wait until this podcast is done.
Welcome back to another Tasting Notes, and part of me just wants to say it's Chad Watson. Does he need an introduction? I don't think so.
Unless no one knows who I am, but
then he's AKA MyDailyBourbon.
Yeah, that works.
Well, welcome back, Chad.
Hey, man, thanks for having me.
Now, we've had some fun chats here recently, talked about daily drinkers, bourbon culture, and I really feel like this puts a bow on this little series of chats here, because I think this all comes together, what we talked about with the daily drinkers, because people want to have the cool things, maybe the bourbon culture, they want to have cool things, whether it's store picks or whatever. But I feel like I'm starting to see the craft beer world come into the bourbon world, because we have had some wild finishes, and I'm wondering where we're headed.
Yeah, so what I've got poured up right now is 15 stars, fine aged spirit triple cask finish. So it's fine aged spirit, it's not spirit. It's a Kentucky bourbon finished in cognac, port, and rum barrels. So
3 you don't normally see together.
3 you do not normally see together, but it's damn good. And to Ryan Cecil from Bourbon Pursuit, on a product like this, like just seeing it, I can hear him saying that you should just drink flavored whiskey, because it's weird. I don't like flavored whiskey. There's like 2 of them that I will stomach, but I love the exploratory flavors of these finishes. But the last 2 things I've poured tonight have both been triple finished, whether it be triple oaked and different oak blends together, or triple other spirit or wine or spirit finishes. It's definitely getting a little wild out there. Sometimes you're tiptoeing around. Is it still bourbon? Is it still rye? Do you like Angel's Envy rye?
Yes.
Have you ever noticed it does not say straight rye whiskey finished in rum barrels?
No.
That's because there's still rum left in the barrel and they blend it. That's where the super mapley molasses profile comes from. So they cannot call it straight because there is an additive in there, being the rum. So Peerless,
I learned something today.
Yeah, so Peerless, their rum finished bourbon, same thing. Not saying that, and that doesn't mean that there's this much of every bottle's rum. No, there is just an amount of liquid in those barrels that will react with the whiskey inside. I mean, it could be like just this much at the bottom of the barrel, but they still have to call it just whiskey, because technically by the TTB standards that is a whiskey specialty. And for those of you who do not know what a whiskey specialty is, that falls in line with the flavored whiskey or additives where you do not have to claim or specify colors, flavors, sweeteners, extra additives, or anything of the like on a label, because you're filing in that form. So something like this. This is 3 barrel finishes. It is a whiskey specialty. They could add color or flavors or sweeteners, but us as consumers are assuming that they are not. So and you've got brands who are doing unique brandy finishes. I'm not going to name any names because that's not what I'm here to do. Except I do feel like I just kind of shit on Angel's Envy right there for a little bit. But I love their rye. I love Angel's Envy. Angel's Envy bourbon's first gift my girlfriend ever got me, so I've got a soft spot for them. I just wanted to throw that out there. Excuse me. But
I see what you did there. Got to work that in. I like it.
Oh yeah. You got to kiss the ass at some point. But there are barrel brokers. I mean, let me backtrack. Let me backpedal a little bit. So, have you ever heard of a term "seasoning a barrel"? Like someone has seasoned a port barrel. Do you know what that means?
No.
That means they are taking port wine, they're pouring it into a dry port, or just a dry barrel. But you would assume it would be a port barrel, so something of the same sort to kind of like rejuvenate and kind of hydrate the wood to bring out those flavors. But if you're putting it freshly in there, you're going to let it sit for a couple days. You're going to dump out whatever you can. You're going to put the whiskey back in there. So doing that adds a lot of color and a lot of flavor, clearly, because you're reopening those pores, but that wine is still freshly soaked in there. Now, there are brands or I'm not sure exactly, but you see crazy finishes coming out these days. It's like, like watermelon brandy. Have you ever, like, I'm not saying like you can't have a watermelon brandy, but a barrel aged watermelon brandy?
Not seen too many of those.
No, not seen too many of those at all. So a brandy is just distilled fruit. So, I mean, that's how you get cognac. It is grapes distilled in Cognac, France. But, there's still a few more laws. But essentially, what companies are doing are taking clear spirits, clear brandies. So, sweetened, sugary, could have flavors added to it, or just could be flavored in general, and seasoning these barrels to produce a flavor profile. And I think that's where we are going too far in the way of what is a traditional bourbon. Do I think we need to have a finished whiskey, not a finished, this is Kentucky straight bourbon finished in. It has to say, and if you look right there, you'll see the fancy lettering, finished in. Those two words are what are deciding whether or not your label gets approved or denied, or a lawsuit later if it gets overlooked, because you're not selling Kentucky straight bourbon anymore. So I feel like we're in 2023 now. This should already been figured out. But from what I hear, it's like 8 old ladies in the bottom of a basement in a government building who are the TTB. So I'm sure things get missed. But I do believe we are hitting that curve of too much. Not saying this is too much. This 15 stars is freaking awesome. I do love this. But you are seeing more and more brands where straight is falling off the label. Finished, it would just be rum finished Kentucky bourbon. And it's kind of a misnomer of, that can have flavors, rum flavors, or, etc.
They're skirting the spirit of the law. Maybe pun intended. I don't know.
I would say pun intended.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's weird for consumers, because when I teach whiskey classes at work and someone says, do you like Jack Daniels? No, it's not bourbon. It is bourbon. Do you like Angel's Envy? Yes, that's not bourbon. Like that, it's such a weird. I'm not meaning to shit on Angel's Envy. It's just the first thing that comes to mind.
Barrel bourbon does a lot of finishing.
Yeah, and if you want to be that guy that's like this and says like, excuse me, it's not actually bourbon, but we know it is because we trust these brands. But are we being too trusting of these brands?
Are we going to have to bring back the bottle and bond act where someone actually sits there and watches what's going on?
Hey, you might have to.
The corgi makes another appearance. But it's true, though, because I remember, a couple years ago seeing what Barrel and a few folks were doing, and it was wowed. You're like, oh, this is awesome. And it is. Angel's Envy, what they've done with their finishing stuff is awesome. A barrel with 3 different blends, 3 different whiskeys coming together. It's interesting to blend, and then having finished blends on top of that is wild. But I feel like now we're getting to that point of, really, is this still what it was once before? And that's where I wonder, like, that craft beer world of, it's an IPA with pink guava and this and this and this and this and this in it. And are we really in beer, or is this just a sugary drink?
And I mean, and not to go into a completely different category of alcohol, but look at Rheingeist and now with their, I mean, have you noticed all their fruit beers are now just a fruit flavor? What does it say on the side?
It's like a malt something or other.
Yeah, but I mean, it is a beer because it's just like an ale or a lager that they've added fruit to, but they don't want to specify anything, because if you say, it's like Urban Artifact. If Urban Artifact was like, we make ales, but we add raspberries and blackberries and vanilla to it and blueberries and all this stuff, someone would say, well, how much of that is fruit? So the beer world has kind of figured that out. And I mean, I guess to go further into it, like 450 North, like, do you ever remember their controversy happened whenever they were putting ABV on cans and it wasn't hitting remotely close to that? And then they were having issues because there was so much fruit in there. Not that it wasn't containing alcohol, but it wasn't containing like the 12% of alcohol they said it did. It was containing like 4%. You're in that realm of, this is just a fruit beer. It's almost borderline lambic, but is it even is it a beer at this point? Because there's so much fruit in it. What is your base? You're getting all your alcohol content from fermented fruit. So it really does come from, and I hate to throw names out there. I hate when I do that. I feel bad, but
Shame.
I know. I'm not like,
We love all those brands. I do love all those brands.
I do love all these brands, but it's just, I mean, these are facts. Things have happened, so it's not like we can't deny that. But I do wonder when we, as a whiskey community, are going to learn when that's going to come back around, and us say, yeah, we should have known better on that brand, or we should have asked more questions on that brand. Because it's kind of like back when people wouldn't tell you where they were getting it, and all of a sudden a new brand came on with an 8-year or whatever, and there was some controversy with a few of those back in the day. I won't throw out names on that one, because it's kind of long ago that it's, the statute of limitations are gone, so to speak. But you got to start to wonder, will that happen again, where we get kind of annoyed when we realize what they've really done? Yeah, I mean, and it's a perfect example, because in the United States government, the alcohol beverage control, like everything alcohol based, produced by. So if you create something and I buy it from you, but I do anything different, like, if I blend it, or if I do anything that's different that you would do, and I bottle it, I can say it's produced by me. I don't have to say where it's distilled or what it is. I can just say, this is bourbon produced by me. Now, what you're talking about, I assume, is the brand who was, created by, distilled, and they were putting all the info on there as if they did it, and they did not do it, which now their products say produced by and bottled by. Still didn't say where it's distilled. But it is a weird realm, because vodka, a distilled spirit in the United States, if you take something from like MGP, like a gin, or so like a neutral grain spirit from MGP, and you want to make a gin, but you are in a state that's not known for gin, but you're like, I want to make my gin famous. You could just distill that neutral grain and then add your whatever to it, all your botanicals, and you've just distilled your own gin. You didn't actually distill anything, because all you did was just take their stuff and redistill it. And that's what a lot of vodka producers do. But, we hear all these things about, like this vodka from Idaho, or this vodka from Missouri, or this vodka from Texas. One of the biggest vodkas in the U.S. market is not made in Texas. It's redistilled in Texas, but because it's distilled there, and it's a gray area, they can claim it's 6 times distilled in Texas. So I think that the bourbon market is right now working within those gray areas of that sort, not to that capacity. Some are, but a majority aren't. But I think that we might be overstepping the bounds of legality, because and I love finished whiskeys, I do, but I always clarify finished whiskeys because that's what they are. But I think we're getting to the point now where so many brands are doing it. And I was just talking to Ricky at 15 Stars, and they've got a 10 and a 13-year-old sherry finish coming out. I'm super excited for that. Love sherry finishes, but some brands you see, like this is a good color. This is 16 and 8-year-old bourbon. But if you see, I don't know if you can hold that up. Mm-hmm. But if you see a bourbon that is like super like ruby red, and it says finished in port barrels, it should not be ruby red. It should have a slight red hue to it, but it should not look like the wine that it was finished in. That it's dark rye from Basil Hayden. That is a rye whiskey, and it says liquid finished, so blended with the wine. But that was after an experiment where they finished in wine barrels, and it didn't have quite the effect. So it's weird category, and I don't know where my main point was going, but I'm basically just saying like we're skirting the line.
I was gonna say, it sounds like there will be a part 2 of this down the road as more and more come on the market, because it is a very interesting topic. So many are coming on with finishes, and how they're finishing it too is different. Whether they're taking the staves and putting it in something else or whatever, and that's I feel like a whole nother topic. And
interstave and cubes, and I didn't even think about that, gosh. I'm glad you said something earlier.
So it is wild, and I'm curious to see where it goes. And this is why I always enjoy talking with you too, Chad, because you gave me a little knowledge there at the beginning, and now I learned something today, and that's what I always like to do.
Yeah, I mean, if I can do anything in any time we record, it's usually 9 times out of 10 I just rant. But if I can do something at least one of those 10 times, it's teach you something.
And you did, and I appreciate it.
Check out Hops and Spirits on social media at Hops Spirits, all one word, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also find Hops and Spirits on YouTube and at hopspirits.com.
Joining us here for our conversation, he's part of a bigger group known as the Davisson Brothers Band, and they have a new album dropping on the 28th, this Friday. The album is Home Is Where the Heart Is, and they've got some other news, too, that we'll get into. But welcome in, Chris Davisson.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time and hopping on here. Now, I know I don't think you're going to be doing too much of this tonight. It is called Bar Conversations, so every now and then we have a drink. But I hear you got to get up early in the morning, so you might be behaving yourself.
Yeah, I'll have a sip or two.
So I decided to, a little something that I always enjoy is a little Dickel, but this one's their Bottle and Bond. What's your go-to, or what is something you enjoy?
That is crazy that you just pulled that bottle up. That's been our family drink since for generations. Well, as long as I remember, that's the drink of choice on our family farm. That's my uncle Pete. He is just that. We bring him memorabilia and little signs from all over the world with Dickel. Anywhere we find something, we drag it back to the farm. He puts it all in the cabin up and puts it, hangs it and stuff. So that's pretty wild. But I'm a George Dickel guy too, and I don't know. We grew up drinking. I was one of them guys that just drank everything, anything somebody had. And we wasn't picky drinkers, but if I'm out in a bar or something, I drink. I like a little tequila, so I'll drink some Patron. And our manager's got a line of tequila in his bars that called Cody Go. Yeah, we drink, but tequila, and I like a light beer. I'm a light beer kind of guy. So
I was gonna say those are all good choices. Now, on the tequila, are you kind of going Blanco, or are you getting the aged stuff and getting fancy with like the añejos and things like that?
Just clear tequila, anything that's clear and good.
I like it.
I used to drink the hard stuff with the worm in it and stuff when I was younger, but I think them days are over.
Well, you got to behave. You got early mornings, things like that. It's a little more difficult. Now, you mentioned the bringing it back to the family farm, putting things up in the cabin, and for those that don't know, that is in West Virginia, right?
Yes, yep. We call it Big Rock Camp, West Virginia. My family founded the town we live in the county back in the 1700s. So we've still got one of the last pieces of the property that's been kicked around, and we finally got it back in the family in the 40s. My whole family, the Davisson family's buried there. So I think we date back to the 1700s on some of them headstones out there. But Major Daniel Davisson, he founded Harrison County, Virginia at the time for his war heroism in the Revolutionary War. They awarded him and his siblings 400 acres. So they wagoned down and built forts and kind of developed the what is now current day Harrison County, West Virginia, which is Clarksburg, West Virginia. So we've been around a long time, and we come from a long line of mountain fiddlers, and so we're several generation musicians. And my grandfather was the first one to go from the fiddle to the guitar. So we've been good.
So music's always been in your family's life then.
Always. That's all we've ever known. That's all we've did. My brother and I have been making a living. He started at 4 years old, and I started at 11. Our dad's still out doing 150, 200 shows a year at 70 years old. So, and I've got nephews behind me, 4 nephews that are writing and recording their own music. So there's 7 of us out on the road at all times. My mom has to keep up with. So.
Well, I mean, I guess it was in the blood, but if you waited till 11, were you just a slow mover to it? What happened there?
Well, we played a lot of sports growing up, and we did a lot of hunting and fishing, and spent a lot of time in the woods and on the farm and hay season. And my brother Donnie, he'd go out with my dad and do a lot. As a kid, he was kind of he'd go to the radio stations and perform, and I remember as far back as him doing Elvira on one of the radio stations. One of the DJs is still a friend of the family. He comes up and shows us pictures of that. I think he was 4 when that song come out, and he did a thing on the radio. Then we started touring around the couple county area at just kids. We was still in grade school and junior high. Then we started doing about 4 to 5 nights a week. I think when I was like in the 8th grade, we had a steady job at one of the hotels in the area. Then we had another, that was on a Monday. Then we had another steady job at a hot dog and beer joint on a Wednesday. And then we'd go find work on the weekends. We'd play fairs and festivals and churches, just everything you can imagine. We played, and we've been doing it a long time. So,
well, I'm guessing you had a few stories from the hollers there. I know where my family grew up. My mom was from Elkins. My dad was from Summersville. Was the closest town.
Wow.
He didn't grow up in Summersville. He grew up out in the woods in Tioga.
Wow.
So I'm guessing you had some good stories and some good lessons learned along the way.
For sure, yeah. And I know Elkins well. That's kind of our second home. We've got a camp up there on the trout stream right there in Bowden, West Virginia. And we go up to Gandy, and we did, we do tent camping on Gandy and take vans up there. It's still, it's not been any. There's no power source from the time you start on that gravel road clear to Spruce Knob. So that's a little more hardcore camping for us, and it's harder. It gets harder and harder to do. The more successful the band gets, it's hard to carve out a week and go up there. But we still make time. We spend just about all our off time, especially in the springtime, up trout fishing. It's ramp season. I don't know if anybody knows what ramps are, but it's kind of like a wild cross between a garlic and an onion. The old natives believed, it was a spring cleaning. So we go after them, and morels are about to pop up, the morel mushrooms, and it's turkey season. So it always seems like Nashville's always got us out of the whole year. They somehow figure a way to have us doing extra stuff during April and May than in the fall during our fall hunting season. There's always extra stuff going on, but maybe one day we'll get that figured out.
Maybe just turn it a little bit more winter and summer. A little
Yeah.
more winter. Now, I know the great outdoors are where you love to be, but when it comes to like a love of music, what music did you grow up on and maybe had a big impact on y'all?
Yeah, that's that's a big question. Mainly what we grew up on was our family, just everything we did with our family. My uncle, he still lives on our family farm, and he wrote a lot of music, still does, but he never leaves the farm, and he's never left our farm. So we go out there and your cell phones don't work. We've never had much phone service out there. But I remember back in the day, they had a party line where, all the neighbors were on the same phone line. So you'd have to wait around on the phone, which was a cool thing to us growing up. But we always, we'd work, out in the gardens. We'd put big gardens in out there. Then it was hay season, but we always gathered around in the evenings and played and sang music. And we never had the luxury of having a lot of CDs and stuff growing up. We had an old record player, so most of our music come from my dad and my uncle. Then we had a coal mine that was up the same holler where we grew up on that farm out there. Then those coal miners would come out from the city, and they would, on their lunch break, they'd come out from underground, and they'd bring their banjos and their mandolins and fiddles, and they'd have these little picking sessions. Well, that music, we had a neighbor, he was an old man, he played banjo, so he'd get a lot of that music off those coal miners. Then my uncles would go over and sit with the old man and learn a lot of that music. And we still do some of these songs in our set, and people ask, where'd you get that verse from in that old song? Like we have no idea, it's been handed down so many times to us. But then I guess getting a little older to get to music, because we just didn't have much, we had a DJ in at the local radio station. He played, he was the night guy on the oldies station, so we would call him and request a song. Like I remember one time requesting Jimi Hendrix, Fire or something like that. I was like, man, or Voodoo Child or something. He'd say, okay, you boys get ready. I'm going to play it at midnight on the nose. So we'd sit around that radio, and we'd have one chance to learn that song when he played that. So we'd be ready with our guitars. But as we got older, one of our neighbors was into Leonard Skinner a lot, and I think we wore out some of them old records and CDs. And I was a big fan of Alan Collins and Gary Rosington and Ed King and Steve Gaines, guitar players. Then I got into a lot of Dickie Betts with the Allman Brothers, and then it was Willie Nelson. We got into my brother and my dad. My dad was a big Willie fan, and we'd always listen to country radio. Everywhere we went, there was country radio on, and my brother was a huge 90s country music fan. He thought he was Garth Brooks there for a minute, I think. But we were fortunate. We were surrounded by good music. Then we started writing at an early age. We started doing these bluegrass and jam band festivals right out of high school. I remember like 17, 18. We was meeting guys like Warren Haynes and Derek Trucks when we was just young, and Derek was just a kid. And we started doing a lot of these events, and we run into the band called Leftover Salmon, which a good friend of ours to this day, Vince Herman, was the leader of the band. And he kind of took us under his wing and showed us all that, that underground bluegrass stuff. And we did that for years. And then we ended up getting with some Nashville guys. And, we'd always had this dream of being on country radio. And, that was a big deal to us. We was big fans of Ricky Skaggs, how he crossed over the bluegrass into the country music, and the guys were our heroes. So we ended up signing a record deal in Nashville, and did the country music thing and had some success on country radio. Then this last record, I'd actually called the Dale McCurry band. I was like, man, I'm trying to make a record that just takes us back to our roots a little bit and shows the Appalachia thing, and still has a good modern edge to it. So we did a bunch of writing over COVID, and we wrote 50 some songs for this record, and end up the McCurrys said, "Why don't you call David Ferguson?" They call him Fergie. He's kind of lives in all kind of worlds. He was kind of Johnny Cash's guy. I think he recorded Johnny Cash over 60 sometimes, and Waylon Jennings, and he just did he did the Rick Rubin Johnny Cash sessions out in L.A., and so he had this little edge to him, and he's recently done Tyler Childers. He kind of made that first record, him and Sturgill, and then he's recorded Sturgill Simpson and Margot Price. So he kind of, he's not down the middle country, and kind of right what we was after for this record. And then I asked him if he agreed to do it immediately. Then I asked him if he minded us bringing our good friend Brent Cobb, which is a singer-songwriter guy, in to co-produce, and he was all about that. So we're influenced by a lot of music, and a lot of wide variety of music. So,
well, and I think this is kind of the upbringing. I know when I talking beforehand, I lived in Beckley, and I remember. I mean, I think at one point in time where I was, you could get like 8 different country stations, and everyone was playing something different. So there's a lot to go off of. And I think I was going to ask this a little later, but it's the perfect time now. Is when you were talking about this album, didn't you literally take a big group of the guys down there and kind of go old school and put them in a circle and let's figure some things out?
Yes, that's exactly what we did. We write a lot on our own, going up and down the road. I've wrote a bunch of songs. My brother sitting in the passenger seat in a Sprinter van, and me driving, and him with a guitar over there. And we get a lot of road time, and we get home. We you got to tend to your family stuff, so we make use of that going up and down the road time a lot. And we've been doing a lot of that writing on our own, and and we're always trying to learn and evolve, and so we're always surrounded by just very super talented guys. And years ago, we was at Dell Fest and playing the Bluegrass Festival, and they was bringing in some jam guys to headline the Bluegrass Fest, and it's just an amazing group of skilled musicians. These guys are just the best players on the planet. And Trey from the band Fish had snuck in on our set and was sitting on the side stage. I looked over the first song. He's sitting there watching. Well, he never left till the set was over. He walked behind the stage, and I come off stage soaking wet, sweat, and he grabbed us. And he said, "Come over here." He's like, "What is that music?" He's like, "I've never heard anything like that." And he was trying to put it together with the Appalachia thing. And, we had a drum set at a Bluegrass Festival, which is, that's a little unique to begin with. And he said, "Man, I would love to come to Nashville and get in some of those writing rooms with the writers that write some of this country music in Nashville, that's all they do is write." And we exchanged information, and for a couple of years, we was trying to find a hole in each other's schedule where we could both be in Nashville and do this. And he got super busy, we got busy, but it was just always stuck in my head, what if I combine these Nashville brilliant songwriters that just have this craft, that's all they do, with the best players in the world, that that's what they do, is they jam at these festivals, and they're the best at what they do. So that had been in my mind for years and years, how to make that happen. And when COVID hit, my friend Vince Herman from Leftover Salmon, he pulled his camper here in West Virginia and parked it at my camp site on the river, and we did some trout fishing and stuff. And I was like, man, it just hit me. It's like, what if I take Vince down here and get with some of his jam band buddies and bluegrass buddies and get in these writing rooms and see what happens. And it didn't take much. I think it barely got on my mouth, and Vince was like, "Yep," fired the motorhome up, and we was heading to Nashville. And so I sat him in a room with I called a couple friends. One was Levi Lowry. Levi's wrote like Colder Weather for Zach Brown. But Levi's got an old family history of mountain fiddlers too, from down South Georgia. And his grandfather was one of the first recorded fiddle players ever in the history of music in the 20s. His great-grandfather. He had that original fiddle, and I was like, man, I'd be the perfect guy for this. Then I called our friend Rob McCurry from the Dale McCurry Band, the banjo player. And I was like, let's take a different approach to this. Let's, get these instruments out and get this vibe going, make things feel good, then add some lyrics. And I called another friend, Sierra Farrell, which she's a West Virginia girl that's doing really good things right now in the Americana world, and just she's kind of blowing up right now. But so I didn't realize, but when we got in the room, Vince is like, I've never done a co-write before, so I had no idea. And Sierra's like, I've never done this before neither. So we ended up writing like 7 songs that day in this studio with all this old gear around us. Had all a bunch of analog gear and stuff. It was just really good vibe. And I was like, we come out and listen back to some of this stuff. I was like, we're on to something here, Got the jam band guys and Levi with these lyrics and stuff. And it was kind of magic. So we come out there, and I called my manager, like, we got to do this again and try to get enough songs to make a record like this. And so we ended up doing it 2 or 3 more times. We took the same deal, went to South Carolina to a lodge, and had that time I brought 4 or 5 monster Nashville writers like Wyatt Durrett, which is just, one of the most decorated songwriters of our time. I think he wrote the first 11 #1 hits for Zach Brown. And he don't play an instrument. Wyatt, he's all off of vocal melodies, and he just hears stuff, He's just one of these guys you might, be out with him at the bar at 11 o'clock at night, and he's over humming something in your ear like, man, can you hear a guitar part to this? I'm like, yeah, because it's kind of cool that he don't play an instrument. Then I had Channing Wilson and Rob Snyder and Adam Hood. But Channing and Rob are responsible for some of the biggest songs Luke Combs ever recorded and put out. They're just these guys that just got this special talent with these lyrics and these melodies. And then I had Vince Herman come on that, and Kyle Tuttle, which is, national banjo champ. And we took him to South Carolina, and I didn't know how it was going to go down. We went over there. We had 4 days planned, and we was going to do a little fishing on the ponds and riding the 4-wheelers and the razors around. And first night, we got down there and all got in our little bunks and put all our clothes in there and started drinking a couple beers. And all of a sudden, Vince and Kyle got the banjo and the guitar out and the mandolin, and I watched these writers just circle and swarm around this. And one of them's like, man, I've never heard anything like this. I was like, you've never been in a bluegrass circle before? And they're like, no. And I was like, I found that amazing to me, as much as they know about music. And then it just started flowing out, It was 4 days of just nonstop. I don't think we slept 2 or 3 hours a night. We were so excited just getting up and starting to write and play every day, all day. And that worked so well. I come back to Nashville and I put another retreat together. I think we did it 2 more times in Nashville and had 30-some songs come out of one of those weeks. And it just amazing, just an amazing experience. And, I get just as much, it's just as rewarding in those writing rooms as it is playing in front of 20 or 30,000 people. When you give birth to these songs and you got something at the end of the day, it's there for life, it's just a good experience. And then also they're just a bunch of good people too. So that makes things a lot better.
Well, and all this ended up leading to what is Home Is Where the Heart Is. That comes out on the 28th. Why did you want to go kind of that Appalachian route way? Because that's definitely different than the first 2 albums you guys had put out.
Well, you get in these record deals and stuff, and, you get a producer involved, and, some of these producers are just, they've had so much success and history, and, you kind of listen to a lot of what they have to say when you're recording, and, you kind of, we're always trying new things, and we're not afraid to go try something and fall on our face, That's part of, I think, growing as an artist. You go trial and error. That's how we've done everything. And we got a little rock edge to us. And I think the last record, especially Fighter, we kind of intentionally wanted to show that rock and country edge of us. And, that was somewhere new to us we was going. And, it worked on country radio. We had some big successful songs. We had a guy in Australia that he'd found us. He'd looked through hundreds of acts, and in the United States, he was kind of the guy that brought a lot of these 80s Australian acts to the U.S. and blew up with these big monster songs. And then he was the guy that brought Keith Urban to the U.S. and kind of the mind behind that. Then in his later years in his life, he decided, I've managed and been one of the biggest talent buyers and promoters in the world. And he decided he wanted to own a record label, and he wanted to do a reverse Keith Urban in Australia. So he found us. We never met him or nothing. He was in our producer's Keith Stegall's studio, and Keith played him one of our tracks, and this guy signed us on the spot with a Sony record deal that he'd partnered with, and took one of these songs, and he did something, the most unique thing I've ever seen somebody do in the music industry. He had us record and do a music video to this song. I remember it was like the end of October. The leaves were just changing here in West Virginia. We went to Elkins, to D&E College, and got the dance program, the Appalachian dancers, the students, to kind of choreograph some dancing and some of our mountain dancing, our clogging and our, the flat footing that we do here. And we recorded this video and put this video out, and he'd put it out over in Australia on what it's called CMC. It was at the time. It's their version of CMT, and it's since then become CMT of Australia. But he'd put this video out on us and leaked this song before the video a little bit, and booked us on a music festival at like the first or second week of March. So this video never really went out till the end of December or something on their airwaves over. And so we've never been to Australia or nothing. And so he played this. They just blew this song up, and it was one of the most requested songs in the history of country music in Australia and all this. But we had no idea, because we can't see a lot of their media over, and we're kind of locked out of some of the stuff over. So he just brought us, never being to Australia, never meeting any of our team or anything, to their biggest music festival in Australia. It's called CMC Rocks. So we literally fly in. It was like a 28-hour flight to get there or something. Mm-hmm. And we get out at the airport, and the TSA and the security's getting pictures with us and asking us for autographs. And we don't even get out of the airport, and some girl comes up and starts doing that flat foot dance in front of us. Like, oh, there's the Po' Boys. And I'm like, what is going on here? We thought they were playing some kind of trick on us or something. But we go to this music festival, and there's just, 35, 40,000 people in front of us. And we got a nighttime slot, and we've never been to Australia, never met any. This is the same day we flew in. And I look at my brother, I'm like, what are we going to do? We don't even know how to talk, to these people or anything. So we come out, and we just took one of the riskiest moves we've ever done in our career. I said, start with the single, the first song, how the set. And they sang it back to us louder than, we couldn't even hear our monitors on stage, and just blew us away that they knew every word of this song. Then did they not only know that song, we was doing songs from our old records that way down deep in the catalog, and they was singing them back to us. They'd already dug in. Then to top it off, we sang Country Roads, the John Denver song, and they knew every word. There's a video online if you Google it, Davisson Brothers Country Roads Australia or something, but it's amazing. They knew that and sang it louder than they would here in West Virginia. It was mind-blowing. But anyway, so we did all that and did the country radio thing and had all that success in Australia, and had a lot of success here. And it really moved the needle for us, that radio. And but this last record, my brother and I, we're always just trying to evolve and and outdo ourselves and outdo each other. We're always trying to write we're competitive people, especially my brother and I, trying to see who comes up, with the best song. And but this idea, just, part of evolving was, to us to go back and show where we come from in Appalachia and put these, these sounds of, it's still on, you turn on the radio right now and within 5 minutes, you'll hear some Appalachian sound on country radio on their top 40 hits are still, the banjos and the mandolins still drive, Appalachian music's still a big part of top 40 pop music today. And you might not realize it, but, but a lot of these guys are heroes too. And, it's just that record we've always been wanting to make in our mind. And, a little less, I told somebody, it's like little less beer in the air and a little more back in the recliner with your headphones on and taking a little ride through Appalachian. I think we accomplished it on this record. So
I was gonna say you can sipping a little whiskey at the bonfire on this one, and it's a great album. I've gotten to listen to it, and it's definitely different. And was it hard? I guess my next question on it is how much fun do you guys have when you're writing lyrics? Because I feel like you were able to tell a lot of stories on this one. You know what I mean? Be able to share some stories through some music.
We take so much pride in that. Like I said earlier, it's just as much fun and just as rewarding to us to tell these stories and shine some light on, our heritage and our culture and, what happens here in these hills. And, we still live in West Virginia. We split our time. We spent a lot of time in Nashville, but, it's so hard to me to live in a city and be down, I think the most we'll go down sometimes for 20 or 30 days in Nashville. And, it makes it that much harder to sing about, what people call country. And when you live it every day and you do what we do every day, when, even if we're just touring through this area up here, we may go do a sound check and grab our fishing pole and go hit the creek behind the stage. We may take an hour ride over to find a brown trout somewhere, and we just do stuff like that. And then just the lyrics mean so much to us, and we try to be, and we do. We don't try, we do. We stay authentic to what we know and what we really live, and I think there's a lot to that. We just have trouble singing about anything other than what we know and what we really do in real life, and it makes it a lot easier to go perform those songs, when you put your heart in it and you're speaking the truth.
I was gonna say you shared some pretty cool things on RFD, and if folks you get a chance to check that out, I recommend it. And on this album, in addition to working with some great writers and stuff like that, you worked with some pretty cool musicians too in recording it. How cool was it to call in some of those guys and girls and be able to work with them?
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. Those are our heroes on this record. We grew up just like everybody else, listening to radio and listening to these old records, and to have these guys show up and put their heart in it. And they're super hard, to even get in these recording rooms. Some of the guys we got, they're very selective about, who they go work with and who they put their stamp of approval on. And it was just a big nod to us. And, it's kind of makes you feel good knowing then some of the musicians, when we was done with the records, like, can we come tour with you when this is out? We want to play those parts on stage. So that meant a lot to us. And it kind of happened, it just kind of happened naturally and organically. Some of it, we'd went in to record the first session, and our producer, we'd never worked with Ferg before, and we'd met him and hung out a little bit and kind of got to know each other, but we had never worked in a studio and in that environment. So we was kind of learning each other and seeing what everybody was capable of doing. So we went in and he let us. A lot of times down there they want to use a session band and do things their way. And right out of the gates, he's like, "We're using your band and we're going to cut this thing live, and we're going to bring some guys to just add to this, not take away anything, just some utility kind of guys." And that's what we did, man. We went in and set up the first song, no click track, and we're like, "Oh man, how's this?" We're a live band. We don't live in a studio every day like some of these guys do. And so he was kind of testing us. And the first song we kicked off with, as soon as it was over, as soon as we hit the last note, and he's one of these guys that don't believe in taking very many takes. I think we only did 2 takes on the first track. And as soon as that last note rang out, I watched him pick his phone up, his cell phone. He said, "Give me a minute, boys." He talked for a minute. He's like, "These are West Virginia boys. I got them in here at old Cowboy Jack's recording studio, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, "Who is he talking to?" He said, "Can you get over here now?" He said, "Yeah." Somebody on the other line. So I could hear him. And he said, "I could probably be here in 20 or 30 minutes. He said, "Well, get over here in 20 or 30. We'll be waiting on you." And he got off the phone and he said, "You don't mind if Tim O'Brien comes over and plays on this record, do you?" I was like, "No." I was like, "Bring him." So that was kind of a really cool moment for us. Tim's a West Virginia guy, and we grew up listening to him, and we grew up around Mountain Stage, and Tim's always doing something on Mountain Stage, and just very respectful musicians and just good down to earth people too. So.
Well, and then you got a big thing coming up here as well. I mean, the album is, of course, a big deal, but the day after that is probably an even bigger deal for y'all, when not technically your Opry debut, but the first time you guys will be rocking out as just the Davisson Brothers Band on that stage.
Yes, that is, as country guys and country artists that growing up in these hills and hollers up here, we grew up, in these areas, there wasn't really a real music venue within 2 hours of us. And it was just so hard to go find your way. And just Nashville seemed just so far away. And when you got down there, there were just so many people trying to do what you was doing. You go down there and just try to just hope to meet somebody. And, damn well, there's no record producers or label heads driving up here to West Virginia to find some band, some of these honky tonks we grew up playing and shit. So it was just, so distant from us growing up, the Opry, and, everybody's like, "Oh, you guys ought to be on the Opry. One of these days you're going to be on the Opry." And, you say, "Yeah, hopefully." And in the back of your mind's like, there ain't no way in hell I'm ever making it to the Opry. You're thinking, out of these hills and hollers. We started getting a little older, and we started getting little steam and selling out these places, and started thinking, yeah, maybe that Opry ain't so far away, and then we got it in our mind that we was playing the Opry, and there wasn't nobody going to stop us, and that was just one of our big goals growing up the whole time. It wasn't just a dream, it was a goal. We was going to get there, and we got the call back in 2019. I was out in Nevada, right on the Nevada-California state line, in a place called Carson Valley. We was out there. We played some shows out in that area. We was staying at this casino and resort. They have a big outdoor amphitheater, and it's right at the bottom of Lake Tahoe. And we just getting ready to go up to Lake Tahoe that morning, and it was cold. I remember it was snowing. The roads were bad, and I got all bundled up and just getting ready to walk out the door, and my phone rang. And I was like, man, it's Chris Jansen calling. I think it was early that morning or something. We just super early for us out there, but we was 2 hours of different time zone from Chris. And he said, "Where are you at?" And I said, "I'm in my hotel room." He said, "Good. I hope you're sitting down." And I said, "What do you mean?" I thought he had some bad news or something. And he said, "Well, I'm officially inviting you and your brother to perform on the Grand Ole Opry." And I think I dropped the phone. I was like, "What?" And it was just one of them moments, just all the work and the blood and the sweat and the miles, and finally, somebody. It was just one of them moments that, like, man, it was worth it. It was all worth it, and we're finally here. And they say you never make it till you play the Grand Ole Opry, and there's a lot to that, and a lot of history, and a lot of people that cut paths to make what we do easier today, and we don't take it lightly, man. And then since 2019, you always you hope for that call back, and COVID hit and shut everything down, and just everything was backed up. We had so much, to make up. These dates got canceled, and this and that, and the records, our recordings were all getting pushed, the writing, and you can't put a record out now. They're still backed up. You can't get vinyl printed. They're still backed up. All these setbacks from COVID. And about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, we was just, getting out some of the promo for the early setup on this record. You got to go through months of setting up to release these records. My manager called, and my brother and I were together, and he called and he said, "Can you put me on speakerphone with your brother and you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, you've been invited back to the Grand Ole Opry," and it was the same feeling, it was the same exact feeling when Chris Jansen called the first time. It was just like, man, like it just tears. You just emotions come from, just years and years and years of hard work, and it's just it's kind of just let you know that what you're doing is working. So.
I was gonna say, I mean, for y'all, I mean, you've been at this for a long time. Whether that's just kind of playing with family, I mean, if you want to go all the way back to when you guys were really young, but even as a group, I mean, over 20 years kind of together. I mean, that's a long journey, and I think people always forget about that. Even some of the big boys have had those long journeys. And,
Yes.
And is it weird to look back where you kind of were to where you are now, and kind of get this chance again?
It definitely is. It's crazy to think that, coming from nothing like we did, and just barely had vehicles to haul our equipment in at times, and I remember having to beat up little Subarus trying to shove guitars in them, and now we got a brand new Prevost tour bus and, a Sprinter van on top of that, and we get to do just amazing things, and to think that, where we come from, that, there's a lot of people, up here, I say, either go in the coal mines or the oil and gas, or you work some little local job in the town, and that's about all the opportunities are. And, things have got a lot better up here, but when we grew up, that was it. A lot of the boys that we went to school with and stuff, they're still working in the coal mines, and that's a great life, but it wasn't for us, and we fought through it, and like everything, there's your ups and downs, and we hit some low points at times, where we considered, just slowing down and doing it for fun around the state, and but we never give up, we never quit, we kept moving forward, and I tell people we've always went up the ladder, we continue to climb and never went down, and just kept our head down, tried to outwork everybody, and it's worked for us. So. And we've did it all on our own a lot, other than some help from a management company and some of our booking agents and stuff here in the last few years. But we never had the luxuries a lot of acts did with these big, powerful record labels and stuff. We kind of went out and earned it. And Charlie Daniels, we toured with him for a long time. He took us under his wing, and I think we did 40 straight dates or something in a couple months with Charlie, and I'll never forget one time he took us on the bus, and he put his big gold belt buckle. He was getting dressed, and he took that big old gold belt buckle off, slammed it down on the bus table in there, and looked us in the eye, and he said, "You know how I got that?" We said, "No." He said, "I sold 1 million records." He said, "You know how I sold 1 million records?" And we said, "No." He said, "I stuck around and shook 1 million hands after my show." And he said, "No, I earned them fans." He said, "Nobody's taking that away from me." That stuck with us a long time.
That's great advice, and And you can definitely tell it in the work you guys have put out and this new record. I hope everyone gets a chance to check it out. And obviously, we're still, 2023. There's still a lot left of the year. What else is up y'all's sleeve, and what can folks expect the rest of the year from y'all?
Well, putting this record out, then we've got a very heavy tour schedule all over the world actually this year, and we're going to tour, a lot of the Eastern Seaboard and doing some big music festivals, and then we're looking forward to going back to Australia, and I think this is the first time I've publicly talked about this, but we're about to confirm going back for a couple weeks to Australia in August for some of their major music festivals as well. Then we're going to come back and get started on the next record, and we're also putting together our second annual music festival here in West Virginia that's in the makings now. We put it out the year before COVID hit, and it was an amazing success in Morgantown, West Virginia, and something we've been trying to do our whole career is start a music festival. And all the COVID stuff, we decided to back off from it for a while, but a lot of fans have been asking when it's coming back, and we're hoping for 2024 to bring back our music festival and get it back up and running. So looking forward to that.
I was gonna say a lot to look forward to, and I mean, you guys only recorded, wrote like 100 songs in all those retreats, so you guys should be good to put out a couple albums, right?
Yeah, but you're never satisfied. What we did, a couple months ago, I'm already thinking, we evolve so much and we get influenced so much, and I'm one of those guys that want to do what's fresh right now and what's going on in our life right now. So
maybe another 100 will come out here soon. Well, Chris, this has been a blast. I appreciate you taking the time, and like I said, folks, give the record a listen. I don't think you'll regret it at all.
Well, thank you, man. Salute.
Cheers.
Find more from Hops and Spirits at hopspirits.com.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.